Yes, you are welcome. Today is a heated debate between Honorable Emmenanuel Dombo from NRM and Nup Party Treasurer, and is a lawyer, Benjamin Katana. Of course, there are a lot of issues which have emerged concerning registering their new members to their parties. Nup party being dragged to court for amending the constitution. They are being dragged to court by the former owner of the party, Mr. Chibalaman, the colleagues. So there's a lot of issues which have emerged here. So let us hear from them.
In 2020, when there was a case brought against the National Unity Platform by some of its members, the same people that have brought a case today, it emerged during the court proceedings that these people had actually been approached by members of the security services on court record, had been approached by members of the security services, and they were used to fabricate claims. But where does that one take you? It takes you to a bigger problem that we are dealing with, the personalization of the state of Uganda. That you have an individual.
Someone would ask a simple question, Mr. Katana, and say, what did you expect?
Do you think the point I was making is useless? You
No.
allow me to complete it, and then
I'm putting a question to you on the point you're making on the show tonight from the extreme end. Edgar Tamaru, who's an advocate for the High Court. Edgar, very nice to have you.
Thank you. A pleasure, and good evening to
I have former guild president of Makerere University, a lawyer, an advocate rather, and activist Ivan Bowe. Ivan, very nice to have you.
It's a pleasure being here tonight.
I've seen people throwing quite a few punches at you on X this evening.
Well, I am rather constrained in being dragged that low, but whoever comes with a sober discussion, I am ready to engage.
You hardly debate shall.
Yeah. Do you want me to storm out of the studios?
From the National Resistance Movement Secretariat, I have Director Communication, former Member of Parliament, actually former Parliamentary Commissioner, Emmenanuel Dombo. Very nice to have you.
Also an ex-guild president.
Also an ex-guild president.
1990, 1991.
Thank you very much, and good evening, viewers. It's a pleasure for me to be here and interacting with my brother Bowe for the first time. And I've always enjoyed whenever his colleagues have been on the media.
All the way from Butaleja.
All the way from Butaleja.
Very nice to have you. And I have, from the National Unity Platform, Party Treasurer, I think that's the correct title, lawyer Benjamin Katana. Very nice to have you, sir.
Thank you, Charles. Good evening to you and all our viewers. It's a great pleasure.
Thank you. Let me start from the extreme end. And I'm asking a very broad question to Edgar Tamaru. Edgar, you are in a situation where you're counting down to the next election. This is May. It's almost done. And that means going by internal political party roadmaps, electoral commission roadmap, and the constitutional provision for when you should have the next election, and the internal processes, we are quite deep into where the next election should be. From where you stand, do you see that there are efforts to get ready for a contestation that can give, that will excite the Ugandan public, but also give us talking points?
We have exactly 2 years, I think, to the inauguration. I think inauguration should be by the 12th.
Yeah,
12th of May, when the president-elect is supposed to be sworn in for a term running from 2026 to 2031. Now, as for readiness, I don't know what you mean by readiness. Unfortunately, the census results are not yet out.
Has the census been completed yet?
Well, it's ongoing.
Have you been enumerated?
Yes, I was enumerated today, but they sent me a WhatsApp and made the WhatsApp call with the enumerator, and I was able to.
You enumerated by WhatsApp?
Yeah, through WhatsApp. I was not home, and I couldn't go home immediately. But I hope everybody gets enumerated or makes an attempt to get enumerated. It's very critical on as to how we plan for the country. You've had our budget is short to, I think, the wish list is now 71 trillion 71 trillion Uganda shillings. That can only be collected if we know how many of our taxes or the tax base that we have. Now, coming to the question you're asking about readiness, I think right from 1980, readiness for elections in Uganda has been wanting, and I think it's defined the ethos and the ethics of Ugandans. We like to do things at the last moment. We like to do things at the last moment, and even when we do them at the last moment, we rush things, and we never do them to the best of our abilities. Many things are always left wanting. It's projected, I think, I don't know, from Honorable Dombo's statistics at their party, when they updated the register, I think we are going to have about 81% of the electorate being between the age of 18 and 30. And I don't know how much engagement has been made in that direction. But looking at the way the political parties are panning out their preparedness and readiness, it looks like the major protagonists in the opposition are pushing for regime change at all costs. There's a regime change within the constitution. And I mean, through a plebiscite, through an election.
Are they? Most of the political parties are having quite significant internal squabbles. You can't push for regime change.
That's what I was talking about. The major protagonists.
Yes.
The major. You see, the ones who are they are the sidekicks and the big shots in the political parties. They are the two big boys whose names are fairly obvious. And the agenda. I mean, at every rally, they made it very clear that the point is regime change at whatever cost or by any means possible. Now, the polarizations in the political parties in the opposition, this is expected for nascent political parties. One of the political parties, I think, the one to which the Honorable Katana, I hope soon, Honorable Katana subscribes to, is hardly 5 years in existence. It only came into existence, or it came to life at the last election. Now, you don't expect them to have structures and culture, a culture fit that is as mature, say, as the NRM.
Some people argue that NRM is actually not a political party. It hasn't decided whether it wants to be a political party or remain a movement.
Whichever way you want to look at it, it's a political organization as well.
An organization,
a political organization, and it's in power and wants to retain power. And some people also argue at whatever cost. So as we go towards, as we head towards the 2026 elections, we are going to have extreme positions. We are going to have extreme positions. The incumbency that is pushing for, staying beyond the 4 decades that we've had, and you have an opposition that is increasingly agitated, that is leading young people. Many of them feel marginalized. As such, the trend that we've been having from 2005, we're going to have confrontation of these extreme positions, and moderate voices will be drowned in that crowd.
Ivan, let me come to you. From where you sit, from where you observe, you've been a leader yourself at Makerere University. Looking at the state of affairs in opposition, in political parties broadly, including the ruling party, is it a question of maturity? Is it a question of hunger to challenge for leadership, for power? Is it a question of disorganization? What is it that is disturbing the organization of these political parties?
I think by far, the political parties currently also lack leadership in themselves, internally. And when you lack leadership, you cannot steer clear. See, the sailors have a navigation. When the navigation board has issues, then it is highly likely you will find trouble at sea. So what we see today is that internally, within the political parties, many political parties have failed to identify what they stand for, probably even where they want to lead us to. And as such, we hear only sentiments, slogans, without much grounding. And to me, that is very dangerous, because I want change, but I want meaningful change. So I don't want us to repeat a scenario whereby some young men in '86, of which many of us here have relatives or might have participated, do whatsoever it takes to have a change in leadership, and 10 years down the road, we are in the same cycle. I am a promoter of the rule of law. And therefore, personally on my side, I discourage any means extra-constitutional, because we must break the chain. We must break the chain. We have never.
What would you describe as extra-constitutional means of change?
Well, for example, if certain people decide to pick up guns or arrows or whatsoever.
Doesn't the Constitution allow that in certain circumstances? I think it does.
No, it
in defense of the Constitution.
In defense of the Constitution,
in defense of the Constitution, yes. But the Constitution shows clearly how you take on the presidency. It dictates the term of the president. It dictates the term of the members of parliament. And I would prefer that even the leaders in the NRM find it within their hearts to allow those processes run. The processes run as they should be, so that we do not go into a spiral of what they are accused of or but as also caution and say the opposition, we have to be accountable, because we have to mirror what we want our country to be when we have NRM away from
Mr. Bowe, the argument in this country has been, the argument in this country has been that since independence in 1962, you haven't had, this country hasn't seen peaceful handover of power from one leader to another, no matter how that leader came into power. So where do you expect that change? You're making an appeal to the ruling party, for example, to find it in their hearts. You're basically inviting divine intervention when people should be standing up, young people like yourself, and the many people here would be in this country would be standing up and saying, no, this is what we want for the country, and this is how we're going to achieve it.
We have to accept that it is, our history is our history, but there has to be an end to a certain thing. When we have bad behaviors in a family, it does not mean that we should encourage or promote it or take refuge and comfort in that bad behavior. As we young people demand,
can we take comfort in fear of having an alternative approach?
Yes, because it can
deal with bad behavior.
Because that is a wild card. It is a wild card, and it can collapse on any of us. So my take on this is that we should demand that we have a peaceful transfer of power.
How?
Yes, using our voices, participating in our civic obligations. You will realize that, for example, when you look at the statistics of the last election, and you look at the number of people that didn't turn out to vote, you can be amazed. So you find to it that we must do things over and above in exercising our civic duties and obligations to make sure that we drive this country to where we want it to be. We cannot be bystanders in the affairs of governance of our country.
We have exactly 2 years to the next inauguration. By deduction, it means we have, you're supposed to have that election by at least 90 days before the expire of the current, the term of the current government in power. So that means, that leaves you with about, out of 24, 21 months to have conducted an election.
Yes.
You're talking about, you're reading out a wish list of things we need to do. And we're looking at the context where we are today. Do we have the space, the room, and the ability to do the things you're talking about?
Charles, I don't want you to take me a narrow path of thinking that what I'm speaking right now is for the 2026 election. I am talking about a country that is going to outlive 2026. And therefore, I don't want to appear like many of the politicians out there who at times I refer to as event managers. Wake up a year or two before the election, and then that's where the energy is. The election gets done, there is some relaxation, and then you see, no. I am talking about something serious, something that me and the viewers can sustain the next 30, 20, 40 years. I am not talking about the 2026 election. No, that is petty. You get, I want us to take the discussion I'm having today is of a country beyond a political event.
A political timetable.
Thank you.
Honorable Emmenanuel Dombo, let me come to you. Just before you came on air, we're discussing about where the country has come from, where it is at the moment, and where it is going. Why, as a senior member of the ruling party, as a former member of parliament, why would you say the country finds itself 62 years since independence, 38 years since the NRM came into power, in a position where it is uncertain about its political path and the participation of its citizens in that election, in the electoral process?
Charles and our viewers, Uganda is a product of many things, including the law of the land, the constitution, the people of Uganda, and then the leaders who are put in positions of responsibility to work as the anchor. And the direction the country takes is dependent on how the law is executed and how the leaders provide leadership of their respective groups that they provide leadership to. Right now in the country, there seems to be a crisis of failure to talk to one another. Because building this country, when you look in the opposition, look at FDC as a party. It had very good ideas. It was formed yesterday. They started by expelling one by one. Gishamont was a very good character. Well, with him in parliament, was the army commander, and he did a fantastic job at a very young and tender age. But he was thrown out because people couldn't be patient to listen to him. When you come to other political organizations, nobody would want even to listen to one another. And many times I've had the Katikiro of Buganda, OHT Charles Peter Maiga, asking why would people not want to listen to one another? How do you resolve matters? Even if it was a home, you are likely to disagree with your wife, you are likely to disagree in the church, you are likely to disagree anywhere. But in politics in Uganda, you find people who begin from the bottom line to bagende
That started with the NRM.
In the elections, in the elections in 1980, I think 96, no, subsequent, when Besigye came in as 2001. He said, you people of Masaka, you'll stand here and you'll be watching him doing what? Going. And then the president asked,
going where?
Going where? We all came from the bush. This country belongs to us. So you want me to go where? And that's the fundamental question that must be, how should Ugandans accept to work together under the current legal provisions, because there is no other anchor other than the Constitution?
Hasn't that been, are you admitting therefore that that's been a fundamental failure of your generation, of the party you subscribe to?
Oh my God. No, you're putting Honorable Dombo.
No, there has been, it's a valid question. I want to tell you that there has been a deliberate, President Museveni, when they came from the bush, is one person who believed in the broad-based government. That this country can only survive if people agree to work together.
NRA is an amalgamation of 22 different fighting groups, opposed groups.
Now, when we came to do this new setup, new constitutional order, it was as if saying that now winner takes it all. And the question would be, if this country belongs to all of us, how shall we sustain, even if there was regime change tomorrow? How can you sustain the governance of the country when other people feel they are outside and others are inside? And this is the ideology you have had our brother, Mr. Besigye. I've listened to him a number of times, and he tells you that he wants to liberate this country from, I don't know whether they are foreigners or outsiders or people who are not supposed to provide leadership, and he wants to bring back the country to the Ugandans. But Besigye and President Museveni were the people who were in the bush yesterday fighting to liberate this country.
From who?
And liberating it.
They're liberating it from who?
From bad rulers.
From non-Ugandans?
From bad rulers.
So what has changed?
What has changed is that by then there was no constitutional governance. And now there is a constitution. But they themselves went to the bush.
Is there a time, Honorable Dombo, when this country has run without a constitution?
Yeah, during a time there was no constitution.
Meantime
they didn't have a
because the rules are
constitution.
decreed.
You have a constitution, but right now we have a new constitutional order which clarifies on how the regime change is going to happen.
There was an independence constitution. There was a 1967 constitution, which was only suspended. And in 1986, that same old constitution was picked up with amendments, with adjustments, and statutory instrument number 1.
But you know what happened? You know what happened during the history of Uganda, how that constitution came to be? The subsequent issues which happened in the constitution before the mutilations, before it was suspended, and then you got yourself with the new constitution in the pigeonhole, and which really distorted the structure and the foundation on how Uganda had been formed during independence. So now that we have a new constitutional order, and the constitution had defined on how the transition or how regime change should happen from one person to another, there are people even up to today who believe that they can change government before the time of elections. And these are leaders who have been elected in their respective organization, and they are being nurtured to take over.
And those same people make an argument and say the constitution made with a lot of promise in 1995 has also suffered what happened to the previous constitutions in terms of, what did you call, what did you use? You used mutilation, manipulation. The people argue like that. What do you tell them?
We have had
that we lost our way along those changes, and that's why we are 2 years before an election, not certain of what and how we're getting there.
We have a constitution which provides on how that constitution must be changed whenever there is need for it to be changed. And those people who make those arguments made the same arguments when they went to the courts of law.
Benjamin
And,
Katana.
they went when they went the Constitutional Court and the Supreme Court to make the arguments about what you're providing, and the courts have since held that those arguments don't hold water. This constitution, which they think has been mutilated, has been amended in accordance to the very constitution, and that is the democracy that we're talking about.
Benjamin, people look to you. People look to you with a lot of promise as the National Unity Platform, with a lot of promise and a lot of hope. Right now, as we speak, the menu that the National Unity Platform is feeding from its predecessor party, the NURP, suggests that things are not well even in that camp. You look across other political parties in the opposition, to which now you provide leadership, and people are saying, what exactly is going on? Where exactly do you find leadership that can give that promise that you can have a contestation in 2026 that shows that the opposition is able to hold together and push for what you've been demanding, which is a change of government?
Thank you very much, Charles. I think it is important to appreciate that you cannot discuss elections, you cannot discuss leadership of a specific organization or the country generally without looking at the context, the political environment in which these organizations are operating. That elections are a small part of a bigger concept called democracy, which presupposes that there are things like rule of law, among other things, and that every actor within the space is guided by the law, not might. And so, because we're operating in an environment that is short of democracy, but you want to discuss some aspects of democracy as a piecemeal, we lose the point. Number one is that political organizations aspire to take power, and they are vehicles for the citizens to push for their aspirations. And so these vehicles are permitted by law to operate and carry out their activities. But because we are operating in an environment that is short of democracy, many times the activities of these political parties are frustrated because you have an actor who is not bound by law, but you think that you can discuss elections as a small piece of a bigger concept called democracy. So that's why the challenges that have happened in all these political organizations, including the one that I subscribe to, that you're asking me about, have had a common pattern of disruption. Disruption in terms of being frustrated from carrying out activities, disruption in terms of using some members of these organizations to sabotage the progress and activities of the organizations. In 2020, when there was a case brought against the National Unity Platform by some of its members, the same people that have brought a case today, it emerged during the court proceedings that these people had actually been approached by members of the security services on court record, had been approached by members of the security services, and they were used to fabricate claims. But where does that one take you? It takes you to a bigger problem that we are dealing with, the personalization of the state of Uganda. That you have an individual.
Someone would ask a simple question, Mr. Katana, and say, what did you expect?
Do you think the point I was making is useless? You
No.
allow me to complete it, and then
I'm putting a question to you on the point you're making before you go to another point.
And your question is?
What did you expect? You said you cannot discuss elections without the context. in which the political parties play. And my question is, what did you expect, especially when you are...
My brother Dombo here has been talking about constitutional arrangement. Our country formed what you call national consensus, much as it has in 1995 when we came up with the constitution. And this constitution set parameters on how political competition should be conducted. On account of bad manners of some individuals that hold the party, particularly that hold the power, particularly General Museveni, we have had a departure from those parameters set.
Precisely.
Precisely, your question of what do you expect?
Yes.
There's what we expect and there's what we deserve.
Precisely, Mr. Katana. The Constitution set parameters in 1995. National Unity Platform was founded in 2019? 2019, 2018?
2020.
When was the party founded?
2004.
No.
National Unity Platform.
National Unity Platform, the one we know today. In 2004 was NURP.
No.
National Unity.
Just change of name.
Yes, the change of name. The change of name, and the one we know today is a party that is young, possibly less than 5 years old.
Actually, Charles.
But whatever.
No.
Is,
so
yes, you can go.
You had enough time between 1995, watching the changes to that constitution and the framework that existed, to the creation of a new party, to adjust your expectations to fit within the context of when the National Unity Platform
has the constitution been amended to say that the consensus of Ugandans has now changed, and the parameters set in the constitution in which political parties should operate, in which elections should be conducted, are no longer tenable. Now we have changed. We have new parameters.
You had watched. You had
Charles,
watched. You had opportunity to watch the application of those parameters, or lack of, for that period, to inform whatever plans, whatever activities you had by the time you became a political party.
Should that lower the standards of what we aspire to have? So you see, if, for example, so many people have stolen, it doesn't make stealing normal. It doesn't stop society from working hard.
When you know how thieves steal, where they break through, what they take, you change your strategies for preventing them from stealing, or for catching them.
Certainly. You may, not necessarily. There are many factors. You may maintain the strategies, but enforce them more effectively. So it's not a...
So what are you doing as a political party and as political players to deal with the context in which you found yourself playing?
But to answer you generally, first of all, is that the situation which you think we should find normal of injustice cannot be wished away. Injustice is resisted. And in the context of political competition, injustice is resisted through constitutional means. These constitutional means include participating in the processes that you're talking about, but also include agitation. The agitation that some of you want to indicate as being unconstitutional. So while we may not come here and give you details, minute details of what is being done to change the unjust situation to a just one, we can generally state that our commitment to resistance is unshakable. And as an organization, and not just an organization, but as people that believe that the situation in Uganda needs to change, our daily responsibility and duty is to study the situation, see how it evolves, and come up with mechanisms on how to contain the worsening situation and reverse it, to make sure that we are able to create in our country a democratic dispensation where competition is regulated by law, not wishes and whims of an individual that is powerful.
Argument from people I have interviewed over the years quite intriguing, that they say we have plans, but those plans are ours. And I wonder, in a political party context, where you're mobilizing all of us, everyone, every Ugandan, to read things from your perspective, how you hold certain things and say, this is our plan, don't ask us. We shouldn't be able to tell you what our plans are.
No, but you see, Charlie, I
I
find it strange that you expect even the Dombo comes from NRM to come here and tell you this is how we expect to win an election, or this is how we expect, this is what we are doing to do ABC. Those are details. But we can talk about the structure, that the structured strategies that the party is engaging in. For example, we are out there, the intimidation and arrests of our people notwithstanding, we are doing mobilization.
Let me read for you a message from a man who is deep in the village beyond where Edgar Tabaro comes from.
Only read messages from Toro. Is that what?
You know, when they send them to me.
When they are signing from here,
actually, that's a very strange and unfair.
Okay, you read that
because I will read it. No, I'm saying it's from
Kijura,
beyond his village. This is actually from Kabende. It's actually from Kabende. A man called Aboki Kato Nyansio. He's vice chairman, NRM Kabende sub-county district, and he says,
that's my sub-county.
good evening, Charles and the team. Political parties no longer matter. Apart from the NRM registration of members, we are not seeing ground mobilization of individual upcoming political candidates. We're just seeing ground mobilization of individual upcoming political candidates, not political parties. This justifies the irrelevance of reinstating political parties in Uganda. Yes, and actually, he sends greetings to Edgar Taba.
It's a hangover from
I have a message here from...
dispensation.
I have a message here from Isaac Okror Ejoku. I don't know if that one is also from my village. Imbra Kitando says, Dombo should remember that Mugisha Munt came from NRM where they first failed to bear with him. That one is also not from the village. Let me find a few more. George Muhimisa says, opposition unity in 2026 is going to be difficult because major opposition parties have factions and internal fights. That's what we're discussing. You cannot build inter-party unity when you lack intra-party unity. The strength of any political coalition is dependent on the strength of the individual components, because even if you milked 100 rabbits, you not get 20 liters of milk that you can get in one cow. Take note that opposition will not be uniting to compete with the NRM party, but it will be uniting to fight a ruling party that is fused with the state. Secondly, there is a sense of frustration among opposition forces, and many tend to focus on individual benefits like parliamentary seats other than the broader struggle. That means during elections, most of the characters in the opposition will be focusing on getting seats rather than the broader struggle. Therefore, we need a serious think tank to guide opposition groups at a technical and strategic level. This will include fighting for political reforms. Short of that, we shall be escorting General Museveni into another swearing-in. What do you say to George Muhimbise? And Nyansio, Edgar Tabaro's village mate.
First of all, is to say that I agree with him. What he states is obvious, that political parties must have internal cohesion. Number two is that people that want to see change, to see a winning Uganda that is inclusive and all that we have been talking about, must come together and work together, not just for the election. The election, like my brother mentioned, is just an event. But we have a whole future to work upon. And we have been mentioning that for us, we are committed to change, whether it is tomorrow, whether it is the other day, whether it is 2026, but we are working towards meaningful change. And that our activities are not restricted to the roadmap of the Electoral Commission. So I invite George and others that are interested in working for change, because change is not a responsibility of an individual. It is a shared responsibility for all of us that are interested in seeing things done differently in this country. So instead of sitting and not sharing these ideas, and then tomorrow they will be saying that, oh, these people should have done ABC, Unlike football, where you must be very skilled for you to be part of the team, in politics, we just need all the hands on deck. Whoever has ideas should come, whoever has energy
and
should come
is sharing
and work
both
together.
his ideas and
Yes.
his energy with you now.
And I'm inviting him to come and work
So
together.
you need to do the follow-up beyond the TV.
Yeah. No.
Dr.
Not
Grace,
only me.
Dr.
Even
Grace,
him.
Dr. Grace Lubale says Uganda lost constitutional order when term and age limit of presidency was removed. The powers given to sitting president to appoint commissioners to conduct elections and judges to preside over electoral offences undermines democratic growth, hence perpetuating bad governance in Uganda. Pardon?
Who's the author?
The author is Dr. Grace Lubale.
Okay.
But Charles,
So someone says I should remind Emmenanuel Dombo that it's President Museveni who promoted Tuve Jeko while campaigning for the return of but
for
gentlemen,
parties.
let me take a message from Michael Chakolaga in Kayunga, Bugerere, who says NRM no longer want to campaign. Their weapons nowadays is in election cheating and grabbing people's victory, who spend a lot of time and money to build their political careers. And he's accusing Dombo of the Kayunga issues in the last by-election. Let's to you, our viewers, for making the Frontline, for voting the Frontline your most favorite English language talk show of this hour. We don't take that for granted. We appreciate you. So the comments that you're sharing with me about the show, I take them seriously and appreciate that you're sharing them. Maiga Robbins, I have read your comment on X. He thinks I shouldn't be asking you too many questions.
interjecting.
Interjecting. Yes, he says. No, but I need to interject. I need to be able to. I need to interject so you don't get us lost along the way. Emmanuel Gimadu, I have also read your comment. Thank you very much for sharing that feedback. We appreciate that you're giving us feedback, and we'll continue to pick the feedback and apply where necessary. But we'll do our best to continue giving you the best show we can. We're discussing political parties and the journey to 2026 and how prepared the parties are, how you're dealing with internal squabbling, and whether you're preparing the citizens of this country to actually support you in the next general election to change anything. Edgar, let me come back to you. On this same question, I'm intrigued by the question of the reference to the context of the contestation. I would imagine that anyone joining the political fray today, or who joined it yesterday, understands exactly what they are confronted with. Is there innovation to deal with the context and create a different result, going by the way things have been?
Is there innovation?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's going to be a business as usual. As we head towards 2026, the three prominent persons that I imagine, the incumbent, the second runner-up, the Honorable Chagulani, and Dr. Kiza Besigye. The style of politics, or the brand of politics of Dr. Kiza Besigye, and that of the style of politics that Honorable Bobby Wine has chosen is that of resistance. And you've had his Treasurer General of the NUP here also saying that it's incumbent upon them to resist the incumbency. Yeah?
If you're in the shoes, what would you do? Because people said the brand of politics that ANT leader, General Mugisha Muntu, presented was the kind of leadership that would be, is not resistance, is not confrontational. But when he offered himself, when the party offered him as a candidate in the last election, Ugandans, he turned out less than 100,000 votes.
General Muntu
what does that say?
General Muntu was talking of building capacity, building systems, building an organization from the grassroots. Now, in the contestation we have had in Uganda, we have the organized, we have the disorganized, and we have the unorganized. Now, the organized unit appears to be the incumbent. They are using the power of the incumbency to even so their registration, updating their voters register was fairly, showing, direction and organization. Then you have FDC that has been pushed to the arena of the unorganized. And there's, for all intents and purposes, I think there's a split of the party. There's FDC Katonga and FDC Najanakumbi. FDC Katonga has been mobilizing up country, selling, I don't know what objective, but I think they are going to launch a new party, or they are very likely to merge with one of the other bigger political parties in the opposition. Then you have the clearly stated position of NUP that they're going to resist, whatever resistance means, but they've also talked of regime change at all costs. And we have their party treasurer here saying he's not going to inform you their next stage. And there's also another force that is not domestic. There are external forces that are pushing. There's fatigue. There's fatigue with incumbency. It's been around for nearly 4 decades. And now some of these development partners, or what you'd call donors, have developed fatigue, and you can see they are pushing for regime change. In fact, we did, I think, have, there was...
You're making reference to that debate.
That debate in the House of Lords.
The House of Lords.
And they even pointed out an opposition leader in Uganda, the Right Honorable Joel Senyonyi, leader of the opposition, as being one such person whom they should be looking at and groom to take over leadership in Uganda. And this is the House of Lords, when the upper chamber of the British Legislative Assembly. Now, and from interactions with persons from such spaces, the donors, I think even these the sanctions that you're beginning to hear, they are going to have more targeted sanctions as part of that agenda of regime change. Now, it's okay. It's under our constitution that you can opt for regime change, but through what? Constitutional means. But I think we have now an principled regime change persons outside of Uganda, or persons who are pushing for regime change in Uganda, and we also have agents and agents of unprincipled regime change in Uganda. Now, that polarization is going to lead to subversive elements on either side of the political divide, pushing for that agenda. And I must say, we really have to come out as an intervention to claim our space, to reclaim Uganda. Because if we continue on that trajectory, believe me, we are going to suffer economically because there will be targeted sanctions. Patient capital. Capital is a coward. And if you have extremists, I've already mentioned earlier, in the earlier segment of the show, that extremists are going to take charge and drown the voices of reason. So unless and until we're intentional and purposeful on guiding and even getting we the citizenry, calling the persons on either side of the political divide, calling them to account, it's not incumbent on the government, the sitting government, to be held to account, but even the persons who hold positions of leadership in the opposition, they should also be called to account, because Uganda is much bigger than all of us. There was a Uganda before any one of us here was born. I'm certain there will be a Uganda after we have left and transitioned to the next world.
I have a comment. This is all the way from Montongamo, from Mr. Tumusime, who says, it's surprising that focus is put on opposition parties, but NRM has its quibbles, but unlike the other parties, NRM has managed to smooth them out of the public eye. Mr. Dombo,
by the way, being in the opposition, and by the way, winning a seat on the opposition, from the opposition, is going to be more lucrative than winning a seat from the NRM, because there are certain.
Dombo, you have your issues internally.
No, there are certain committees. There are certain committees of parliament that have to be chaired.
Charles, Charles, there is, in the issues that we are discussing tonight, there are the strategic and ideological issues which will force foreigners who are seated in their countries going to the level of identifying leaders in Uganda who must be groomed. The question would be why? Is it because they love Uganda so much? Or do they have silent issues where they would have loved Uganda to be, but President Museveni is preventing them from actualizing them? Recently, President Museveni met the World Bank team and other African leaders in Kenya. And he gave them a trajectory where Africa has been and what these multilateral financiers have been doing to exploit Africans. Now, there are not many African leaders who can stand up to tell these imperialists in their face what the hemorrhage they have done to Africa. Because if they are saying this to Uganda because President Museveni has stayed long, what good thing have they done in countries where democracies have changed leaders every day? Is it because, are we suffering because President Museveni has stayed longer? Or is it because President Museveni is staying longer and is preventing them from meeting their agenda where they would have loved Africa to be? But coming to the question which you brought about scribbles in NRM and smoothing them using money. You know, whenever somebody is competing and losing, they will always have something that they want to tie themselves to. Look at the FDC. When the FDC started the rumor about money, it was a self-inflicted rumor promised by one of the frontliners here, and he said he had evidence and he promised the people of Uganda that was going to provide evidence. Up to today, no evidence has ever been brought up. It remained a threat, even to the level of splitting the party. People want to say that true in Uganda, NRM has one big advantage, which has been talked about here, is that's the advantage of incumbency. That because the NRM is incumbency, President Museveni is the commander-in-chief, is the fountain of honor, and he has opportunities and through which he can settle for himself. He said he has so many rooms in his house where he can place the children of NRM and other members who may not be NRM but who wish to work for the people of Uganda. That is an advantage which everybody is struggling for. That's why they are struggling. You saw in the opposition in parliament, they were accusing Impuga of bringing relatives. When Senyonyi came, the same thing was bringing in. So incumbency becomes an advantage if you know how to use it and use it well for the development and structuring the country. But to say that it's because money is hanging around,
yes,
that's why.
But is it healthy for your party, for the NRM, that you haven't structured the party to look beyond its founder and leader, President Yoweri Museveni, that leaders who have imagined the NRM and attempted to challenge going up towards the party leadership of the party chairman and therefore president have been knocked down and they haven't been able to raise up their heads?
Purely because the people in the NRM still believe that President Museveni is still valuable and helpful, and he still has wisdom that can provide strategic guidance to the country and to the organization. That is the same problem other organizations are failing. Look at FDC and Besigye. Supposing Besigye had been around in FDC, still as a founding father and founding president, providing strategic leadership, he chose to exit but didn't exit. And now that ruptured the party into two positions, centers of authority. And that's been the problem.
You have a very active movement within the NRM of, for example, the people who say they support General, who are demanding for transition and looking at that transitional demand through General Moses Kainerugaba.
But what did they call it?
There is unrest within the NRM over whether it's President Museveni who continues or other people allowed to emerge.
What did they call General Kainerugaba? They called him standby what? They called him standby generator. Can a standby generator work when there is main power?
But surely, Honorable Dombo, you're aware that political parties that haven't defined how they transition from one leader to another across the African continent haven't survived beyond that particular leader. You could look across the border in Kenya, where the president has been today, and Kanu of Daniel Arap Moi. You could look to Southern Africa from the Kenneth Kawundas all over that space.
That's why I'm saying
no one has survived.
That's why President
No party rather has survived beyond.
You know, if you have listened to President Museveni talk and giving the historic perspective of why African parties have been failing, the failure to understand where the problem of Africa stems from. Others believe that a leader staying longer is the biggest problem of Africa. There are those who would want to define it that way. So if you change the President Museveni tomorrow, will the poverty end?
Isn't it President Museveni who first defined it as that? There's a book to that effect titled "What is Africa's Problem?"
It is part of the problem.
Yes.
But it's a problem if there is a continuous stay without being elected subject to democracy. Because if you are going to elect a leader and there are free and fair elections and there is leveled ground, should that honestly be a problem?
And we have that in Uganda.
Absolutely.
Tell Katana that his brain can do much when he is in NRM. I love him, but he's party. Come on. I decided to watch the program today after knowing that Katana is part of the guests. I still believe he isn't useful as party treasurer, but he should be party spokesperson, much as it's a lower post, but very important for the followers. Katana should join NRM, and we will be happy to have that brain in Greater Bushenyi. So these messages are coming.
Let's wait for Mutaleja.
You could have a constituency in
Bushenyi.
Hamza in Intinda says, I would like to thank Tawaro for the mature analysis he has made today. His analysis about NRM, the British and the Ugandan opposition was so educative. He summed it up by saying Uganda was there and will be there even when we are gone.
That's
Hamza in Intinda.
Because it gives context his views.
It's Hamza in Intinda. Gift in Nansana says, as long as Museveni still enjoys all the powers that he has, Uganda should not expect the best from political parties, because he knows that if he allowed them to freely operate, then the NRM will be swallowed up. That partly explains why Honorable Betty Namisango Kamya, who had initiated the process of having a referendum to check the president's powers, had to be fished away at a heavy price and went with all our signatures. To Mr. Bowe and others who think like him, there is no monopoly in opposing the NRM. If the energy and time they are using to fight those wishing and doing a lot of work for a better Uganda was put to productive work, Uganda would be a better place to live in. Let them walk the talk and stop lamentations. That's Gift in Nansana. Mr. Bowe actually wanted to come to you next. Yes. If you follow vote patterns in this country, the political parties that have, or political players that have demonstrated the highest ability to be aggressive also turn out the best numbers. You can go back to 2001, the contest between President Yoweri Museveni and Dr. Kiza Besigye.
I remember.
That's 2001.
Yes.
There were other players in that space that didn't amount to much. Those were the closest contestants. The same was repeated in 2006. The highest polls, Dr. Kiza Besigye, President Yoweri Museveni. Mode of operation, mode of mobilization, the rhetoric they used, closely related. 2011, 2016. Come to 2021. Robert Sentam Chagulanyi emerges on the stage, and he is aggressive in his approach, and he pulls the biggest other numbers. The other people who are supposed to be moderate, who are non-confrontational, always get lost somewhere in the middle. What does that say about the character and the nature of Ugandans participating in political activities?
One, Ugandans to some point get excited. We get excited, and because we've been getting excited over a long period of time, it has had an effect that we do not reflect to change tactics. It also means that in the process, we lose leaders. And because we've not reflected as a country, we find ourselves in the same cycle. I want to say that Ugandans, we should now stop this business of saying he's a good leader, but this one is the more exciting. I think we should not look at excitement. We should look at things that issues, two, the ability to lead. Because elections can be funny, more so in a democracy. That a democracy can give you a disaster.
You discourage people from picking up arms, but now you don't want
Yes. No, I discourage people from picking up arms, but I am calling them to a higher standard of looking at those that offer themselves for leadership, beyond the pomp and the vibe. I want to say that I am one of those that believes that for us to have an accountable government, we must have an accountable opposition. Partly what is causing a lot of problems in the opposition today is that whereas many present themselves to be opposition, in actual sense they are comfortable. The billions that flow to these political parties have also created comfort that they don't even internally want competition completely.
Wouldn't they want more? If you look at the share of that money from political parties, I believe that NUP would want to take home what NRM is taking. FDC, DP, UPC, PPP would certainly want more than they're getting at the moment.
Well, you look at it that way. But what if what they are getting is what they desire and that's what they are comfortable with? You see, you should never underestimate or try to overestimate the ambitions of particular individuals. From 2021, the National Unity Platform has got over 13 billion as of June of 2023. That might be their ambition. Completely.
But don't use your ambitions as a measure.
The party treasurer is here. The party treasurer is here.
Those are your ambitions. Ours are bigger than that.
I want my brother Katana to maintain the civility and also try to respect the fact that I am using a mic.
I'm on
but also it might be true that indeed they are serious about changing government. It is also true that conflicts in political parties should exist. They are healthy. It should be a contestation of ideas. The ability to solve those conflicts is what distinguishes a lack of leadership or presence of a leadership. When you fail to resolve the conflicts in-house, then you failed as a political party in leading. And therefore, you cannot tell me that, you see, I will give an example of a family. If every conflict in a home is not managed, then it cannot survive. It cannot survive. So it is my opinion, my highly considered opinion, that when we have more contestation of ideas, which is largely lacking in political parties, it is more personal who gets which position. Yeah, who is the Secretary General, who controls the money, who does that and all that. Usually that's where the biggest fight is. So we should again call political parties, all of them, to a higher standard of trying to give us direction of a better Uganda than we have now.
Thank you. Mr. Lubega Kajura, kindly, when you're sending messages, it's only fair that you don't insult us.
I mean, the demand of good manners.
Yes,
It's good
only,
manners.
It's only good manners that you don't insult us or insult anybody for that matter. But I'll still take your message. I'll blind out the insults. And he says that, he's complaining about us discussing politics most of the time. And he says, because continuously, that's where I can start the message. Because when the Constitution was promulgated in the year 1995, the political question was settled, i.e., the substructure was laid. You correct the spelling of the word laid. And anybody's contest, anybody contesting any political mismanagement should just go to courts of law for redress. As of now, the issues we need to be discussing should include issues of the economy, micro and macro, unemployment, service delivery, taxation issues, challenges in medical and education, and the monster of corruption. Otherwise, if today the president in the seat can change army leadership without coups, as it was, it is an indicator of a stable state in which politics and economy can play freely. If some people think Mr. Museveni is the problem, the citizens should massively vote him out of power. Political contestant that you take so seriously is an elitist squabble, not addressing
a very good point.
The basic needs of our people.
Space.
Yeah, pick it up from. He says we are wasting time discussing.
I don't agree because whereas in other economies, most developed economies, the economics determines the politics. Here, the politics has an effect on the economy.
I am actually looking for a country across the world, that makes an attempt to play elections as a means to their democracy, that is not having serious political contestation. The United States of America, the battle between Donald Trump and Joe Biden, that's been raging over the last so many years. In the United Kingdom, Sunak.
We are likely to have a fall of government there.
Sunak,
in Scotland, the first
Scotland,
secretary stepped down.
Is it Slovenia that where they attempted to assassinate the prime minister? The prime minister.
Yes.
So I'm looking for a country. Israel.
No, I think
the biggest battle within, including the Likud party. So I'm wondering, India. I'm wondering, Kajura, where they are not discussing politics. Go ahead.
Just here across here in Kenya.
To be fair to Kajura, politics is not restricted to discussing elections.
Yes.
And even if we were to have a discussion on the questions he's talking about, solutions to unemployment, the taxation regime in the country, Ivan himself was making a case for contestation based on ideas.
Yes.
That would give us an opportunity to have a broader political discussion, but alongside those areas. So I want to believe that is he's not saying don't discuss, because in any case, if you are discussing politics, you are discussing management of society. Management of society involves economics and all that he's talking about. So I think maybe he's calling for a broader discussion, not restricted to what we come here most times to talk about. But yeah, that's how the world is. People view things differently.
What I would want to tell
people view things differently.
We'll be having reading of the budget in the next 1 month. We'll also have State of the Nation address.
Yes.
So there will be opportunity to
unless Mr.
dissect.
Kajura doesn't watch regularly. We've had the Commissioner General of Uganda Revenue Authority here discussing
EFRIS
and taxation. We hold all those other discussions, and then I think you should remember that we ran a 24-hour cycle. That there is a segment that discusses everything on the station. And the many other media houses are discussing a bit of everything over time. Kenneth Ntaro says, first of all, I think this is a great panel. Thank you, Ken. Secondly, until the opposition decide to focus on the country other than the individual power hunger, there will be opposition groups that will challenge, there will be an opposition group that will challenge NRM that will challenge to the NRM. Ken, if you could kindly correct this message and resend it, clarify what you wanted to say. But I think you have something that you want to communicate to us that I'm losing because of the structure of the message that you sent to us. Mr. Dombo. Yes?
I thought Dombo had made his submission.
No, he hadn't actually. Oh, you can go ahead. You can go ahead. I'll give you the space. I'll give you the space.
Yeah, and I want to start from the submission about what my colleagues were talking about. The interest in the politics of our country by external actors. And my senior brother Dombo here is dropping the usual line of imperialism. But today there has been a raging debate about how we are going to manage this budget. We are already dealing with, say, a loan of up to a tune of $96 trillion. This money, the lenders, are they from Hoima? Are they from Chijura? They are foreigners.
Kijurawati sectors.
They are foreigners making money from Uganda through lending money to Uganda. So if there is anybody that is the leading agent of imperialist, because capitalism and imperialism, they are Siamese twins. The leading agent of imperialism in Uganda is your leader, Museveni and his government. But that is point number one. Number two is that Uganda is part of a global community of nations. This community of nations has challenges in terms of, say, it is skewed in favor of the powerful countries as opposed to the weak countries. But these countries have set parameters of relationships that all the members of this community of nations must adhere to. So when you fall short, they will call you out, not because they support Edgar, who is your opponent, but because you have fallen short of what you committed to. Number two is that there are some actions, or what you would not even just bad manners, but beyond bad manners, that face global condemnation. Issues like violation of human rights. Today, the world is discussing the genocide in the Middle East. South Africa has been making a lot of noise. Not because South Africa wants to exploit anything in the Middle East, but but because
community of nations.
Yes, but because it is a member of the community of nations, and it feels that this particular player has fallen short of the standards. That's why it has gone to the International Court of Justice. So when you engage in wrongdoing and you are called out, address the wrongdoing. Say I'm innocent, and say I'm innocent because of ABC. But don't rush to get a blanket cover that these people are just interested in regime change. If they're interested in regime change, you ask yourself, because these are the people that have been supporting you. We have talked about the money that they have been lending to you, that doing business with you. So why all of a sudden? Because you see, to know who a nationalist and a Pan-Africanist and a patriot is, we are not judged by our speeches, but we are judged by our actions. If you are running down your country, you are the president of Uganda, there is no way you can say that you are a patriot when the fellow Ugandans that you're leading are in hospitals and cannot access medication, when the schools in your country are run down, when you are violating the rights of Ugandans, when the business you have failed to make sure that there is a conducive business environment that will enable local enterprises to grow. And you have allowed foreigners to come here and exploit locals, and you call yourself a patriot, I think that is to be dishonest. So let us judge actors from their actions, not just speeches. The other thing that I would like to talk about is that you are talking about, and I think one of the messages, the gentleman from Fort Portal mentioned that they are only seeing individual actors who are aspiring for positions. Today, as we speak, the agents of National Unity Platform who are conducting registration of members, which is a legitimate party activity in Ubundubujo, Bwambare and his colleagues were arrested, are in detention. In Mbare, Ismail, I forget his other name, has been arrested and they are for conducting registration of party members, and they are saying that they have charged him for sabotaging government programs. And our senior colleague Edgar will tell you that that is not a crime under the laws of Uganda. But because someone is engaging,
because we have a census code,
someone is doing legitimate party activity. So I think it's very important that we appreciate, first of all, the structure challenges that we have in our political setting. That we have a challenge of a system which we inherited actually from the colonial administration and still pertains today.
Okay.
That the citizens of the country have minimal stake in running of the state affairs. And you have the individual, the incumbent that you're talking about, who is the president, who has personalized all state institutions. When he's involved in an election as a candidate, you are contesting against the army, you are contesting against the police.
Isn't that the structure of the constitution that you made?
Not necessarily, because when you look at the constitution has largely been overthrown. Because when you look at the constitution, it talks about an independent parliament.
Before she joined, and someone sent a message to that effect, before she joined, I think I read it,
yes.
Before she joined the government, Betty Kamia, I think it is Gift who said she was with the book
and she had the point. But even the constitutional arrangement we have today talks about checks and balances.
Okay,
but
let me take a sorry, cut you mid-sentence. But Justin Wabine says most political parties are just transactional entities. They're just used as vehicles to further the nest of the promoters and top echelons. They waste a lot of time duping the common followers that they have some ideals and inspirations they espouse, whereas not. Unfortunately, the common follower, follows blindly and realizes later that these individuals in such parties were just available to the highest bidder in the market. My question to Justin Wabine is, what is your and my responsibility as the elites of our society? Laban Muhawe is watching us from Chitagata Shem, and he says, we cadres talked against political parties and promoted individual merit, so forgot them for 20 years, e.g. in Muhwejo, they vote Museveni and Mujuchi. So my brother Katana, forget the unit of confused parties and come back home.
He was running as the party candidate in Shema. my brother Rabban Mahawi.
To this edition of the Frontline on NBS TV, and thank you once again, you are viewers, for the faith you've shown in us and for the support you give us. That's why we're able to take your messages as much as we can, and to engage in this conversation, because you make the show what it is. Dr. Stella Nyanza has commented on X about the composition of the panel, that it doesn't have female representation. Well, we apologize for that, but we've also had a bit of challenges maintaining that gender balance for a late night show as we do. We make the effort, and I'll appreciate you sharing any recommendations of people you think can be available to participate in the show on a regular basis. I would appreciate, even if they had actually changed regularly, I would appreciate a pool of names, and you can share those with us. Solomon Webalarali says, my question goes to Honorable Dombo. What does Honorable Dombo understand by imperialism? Imperialism. NRM worships imperialism in exactly the same way that other political players worship imperialism in Africa. Since 1986, and even before, NRM talk has been petty radicalism and not revolutionary in the strict sense of a revolutionary spirit. Exchanging Western finance capital for Chinese finance capital is no way to fight against exploitation of African resources. You cannot deny Ugandan entrepreneurs business in favor of Chinese and say you are fighting against imperialism.
I am agreed with.
China has been able to reach where it is because it opposed foreign capital as it supported national and emerging industries owned by Chinese entrepreneurs. Edgar Tabaro understands what I mean.
I know some.
Charles, let me just finish a few of these messages because I need to give you adequate time. You haven't spoken for long. Julius Ankunda is watching us and says, are you talking of a multi-party political dispensation in Uganda with a kind of political parties in quotes, in Uganda, all without exception, and the political culture of parochialism and personalization? What a bad joke. That's Julius Ankunda. Another viewer here, who is this? Yes, Byamsha Godfrey is Nup coordinator for Greater Bushenyi. Your people are watching, eh? And they're sending messages. Sometimes I really wonder seeing men like Honorable Dombo, who come from the most impoverished communities, but still praise NIM. I am sure that's why people voted. Byamsha, you need to be kinder. I want to thank my brother Comrade Katana for braving up the quest for change amidst all the hostile environment of this regime. By Byamsha Godfrey, NOP coordinator in Greater Bushenyi. I have a message. Who else here? Let me see.
What is this?
Nahamia Emmanuel Ruguru says, he's in Makerere University. Over the years, opposition parties have played formative politics where people are being promised change. Their only focus is failing the president of Uganda, no solution, but rather living in lamentations. My brother Katana should forget about having a united opposition for a common goal. We are tired of endless promises of removing a dictator. We need a united country where there is dialogue. Together we can. I think I should stop there for now. Who's this from?
What's this nostalgia about?
Davis, yes?
Greater Bushenyi.
Greater Bushenyi.
I mean, it was chopped like any of our districts, so they should stop reference to Greater. And by your own people, Kawejere, Raferi, Adu.
The greatness of Bushenyi is not in the side.
No, okay. And by your own people, Magezi, Otafire, and
Davis Rwambumbu Kyalgonza is also a NOP coordinator in Fort Portal City. He says, in Toro sub-region actually, he says, Hakivale, Kijura, and Busoro, where NUP is registering many members, GISOs are intimidating members, telling them that it's only NRM authorized to register party members. So what type of regime is that doesn't respect the law?
Hakivale. I didn't know there were any NUP members at Hakivale.
He is here, he sent a message.
You are not on the ground.
No, that's my neighborhood.
Honorable Dombo. There are many questions that have come to you, there are many comments that have come to you. I'd like to give you a free pass.
First and foremost, many people who comment about the structure of the economy and what is being done ignore the fact of how Uganda came to be what we are. Because when the NRM took over power in 1986, how was the economy like?
Captured.
Yes, they really captured power in 1986. What was the structure of the economy? What was the collection of what was the revenue collection at that time? And was there any government to be proud about, or structure of government, or state of security?
Is it fair that you look at Uganda from 1986?
No, not.
Why not take it as a collective? Why not?
I'm talking about because I wanted to give emphasis the imperialism, the use of the foreign capital in the rebuilding of the country to what we are. Because when I was a member of parliament, I had an opportunity to chair a committee of transport when we organized an international conference called IPU. And when we were given the protocols of the type of transport we should put for delegates for us to be able to host, we accepted we shall do them. But when we put up an advert in the press in Uganda, inviting private companies that run transport companies to provide buses with AC, air-conditioned buses. In the whole of Uganda,
Luxury buses.
in the whole of Uganda, there wasn't even a single bus.
You got them from China.
Totally, not even a single bus.
When was
And that was about 2000.
About 2000.
2000. And those are the rich people you're talking about in the country. We had to seek permission from the president and to ask him to use his contacts in Nairobi to ask the government of Kenya and also to get from the private sector in Kenya and Tanzania in order to bring their buses here for us to use them. So those are the rich people you're talking about in the country. So
when the conference was done, did you sit back to reflect and say, what kind of country are we actually running that is unable to provide a single air-conditioned luxury bus to transport?
Actually, during Chogam,
did you have that discussion?
During Chogam, government had to import 2 buses, I think some buses that were air-conditioned, and now Parliament of Uganda has had to acquire their own buses because of that shortage.
The VIP cars you procured from Zimbabwe.
Not only that, when we came to limousines, provision of limousines for the VIP delegates, we put up an advert for 300 limousines. And we failed to raise them in the country, in the economy of Uganda. And we still had to meander in order to provide alternative transport. We had to go to the members of parliament now to surrender their personal vehicles.
That was just
at
after 14 years of General Museveni.
That is the economy. It's not President Museveni refusing people to have vehicles.
No, were you reading the 10
But that was the structure of the economy.
reading the 10-point program?
So, in order, just a moment, let me make this point first. Now, in order to rehabilitate the Ugandan economy, when you're a beggar and you're poor, at times you run out of options. That's why you found Uganda being forced to do many structured adjustment programs, purely because there were conditions in order to receive funds in order to stabilize the economy. So progressively, the foreign capital cannot be wished away. Because if we are going to talk about unemployment, what is the cure against unemployment other than attraction of private capital, so that you have increased manpower, opportunities for work when people come and invest in here. So that is not imperialism. When we prefer Chinese investors, when we create opportunities for people in Uganda, could be what you would say is that there must be increased opportunities for the people of Uganda also, where...
No, the argument Mr. Solomon Webale was raising is that foreign capital, whether it is from London or Guangzou or Brussels or Kiev, is still foreign capital.
Foreign capital.
So you don't choose. Not part of it becomes imperialism, and the other doesn't become. It's all imperialism, isn't it?
How was Africa liberated from the imperialism? Because also we had to rely...
Has it been liberated?
We had to rely on many foreign agencies of government. The Chumba came in to liberate South Africa. We had Russia and other friendly countries, China, funding opportunities here to fight against colonialism. So it does not mean to say that every foreign help or every foreign capital that comes in here, that is a form of imperialism. Because if you want to find out that, look at the people who are setting standards that my brother Katana is talking about. That when you do bad manners and you don't behave like they do. How did those people behave when South Africa was under apartheid? How did they define that condition, that situation? How did they...
was under sanctions.
And
those sanctions forced them to open up the political space.
No, it's not sanctions. They fought. The South Africans fought. There was a big fight. And
yeah, but South Africa also spent a lot of time under the regime of sanctions
and
embargo.
And they had fight. So it is true that in Uganda we have had some failures because in the fight of corruption. We have had people who have been excessive in in militarization or misunderstanding or exertion of their powers because they're in the military. The president has come up to talk about some of them. Some of them have been arrested and they have appeared before the courts of law. But when you look at how Uganda has been constructed, in order to get young parties like FDC being created and then they come into government, National Unity Platform as a young party, enjoying the form of government that we have for them to become the leader of the opposition in the country. We are still building the process, building bridges. It has been a challenge, but you cannot say that it is a total failure, and therefore we must support our imperialists who are arguing that they must support the younger leaders like Senyonyi to come up, because that alone, the statement they have made, is going to create a problem in the National Unity Platform. Because you know that now they have selected and chosen.
Gentlemen, I'm afraid. Let me take a message from Ivan Ahura, who says, politics is serious business that affects the operation of all sectors in the country. It is at the center of human existence. When politics goes wrong, each and every sector in the country are directly affected, because all sectors, be it health, economics, security, agriculture, justice, etc., even religion, they have their roots hinged on the politics. So discussing politics should in fact become a concern of every citizen on a daily basis, as each and everybody is affected by what takes place in the politics. That's Ivan Ahura. Kolab in Bushenyi, I did read your message actually. You're complaining that I haven't read your message. I did read it, and Benjamin responded to it. He's the one who was inviting you. He says your brain is needed in Bushenyi. Benjamin, I did read your message. We're continuing.